everybody, and welcome to Life After Death and Beyond with myself and my dear friend Kellee White.
Hello, hi, Kellee. James. Hi, everybody.
We've been waiting for this show for a long time. Oh, yeah.
We have. Yes.
So this is our best of this past year because we had a lot of audience members who really wanted to know what were our best shows. What episodes do you like the most? And it's really hard for us to,
Oh my gosh, we've had so many great guests, James.
So many great guests,
and really great topics.
A lot of great topics, lots of diversification topics. It's so interesting because this whole field is opening up and expanding in so many different ways. I remember when I met you and said, "No, you got to do mediumship, not therapy is going to move it," and you've done it and you've integrated so beautifully. And now a lot of other people are doing exactly that. They're integrating.
Yes,
you must hear about it all the time. Therapy.
I hear about it all the time, but isn't it wonderful for all of us to watch the growth of spirituality? But you were a pioneer in the growth of spirituality.
It's come up a lot lately, that whole pioneer thing, which is, it's true. I got to accept that. It's very
true. You're the OG, as they say.
I'm the OG. It took me a while. What the hell is happening? The OG. Yeah, but I've thought about that, Kellee. Since 1990, whatever it was that I started, or whatever, right, 80s. It was it's changed quite a bit, and it's so amazing that more and more people are just aware, opened up to all these different types of disciplines, belief systems, whatever. That it's great. So I think things are changing. When people want the things to change, they are changing.
Well, they're changing for sure. I mean, interesting enough too, astrologically, it all plays out, and we'll see when we do our prediction show in 2025. The planets, the way they're lined up, it really will be for spirituality.
Wow, that's perfect.
And you were a leader.
Well, yeah, we're going to go through. We picked some of the top people that it's hard to top you, but some of the shows have a lot of response to, and we thought we'd share them again to you. So the first guest we had that I thought we should get into is Alex Ferrari, who does the Next Level Soul.
Well, let's talk about Alex Ferrari. And unfortunately, I wasn't there that day because I was either in the hospital with my gallbladder or we had a tornado. I actually don't recall what it was, but tell us about Alex. He's a wonderful man.
Wonderful man who started as a producer, film producer years ago, with a very similar background, but he wanted to do something which made a difference. And he always went back of his head. And he'll talk a little bit about it in the interview. He had the back. He wanted to do something to help people, to help service humankind, if you will. And he did like a little independent things. Then it got bigger, and then he started interviewing people here and there, and it just kind of grew. From his podcast, then went international. His podcast got huge, and it's just so wonderful. In Yiddish, the word is what? Nevish.
Hamish.
What kind of Jew? Yeah, he's Hamish. So he's someone just cuddly, lovely. The first time you meet him, you love him. He's so easy to speak with. His interviews are worldwide. He's growing by leaps and bounds globally. I'm going to start doing some live shows as well. I'm going to be in his first one that he does down in Texas next year. So he has so many different interests, and his podcast, everything from channeling to aliens, UFOs, very much like one step more beyond ours even. It's just, it captures so much. So here's a little glimpse of Alex Ferrari when I was on it. Well, first of all, there's one question I have, which is kind of interesting. So you've had the show since 21, right? Since
2021, yes, yeah.
Right? And since then till now, have you found that your spirituality has changed in any strong way? And which way has it changed?
Oh, I mean, you can't be unaffected by the conversations you have.
Yeah. How has your life changed then?
Oh, my life has changed dramatically. I mean, I was already on the spiritual path probably about 2 years before I launched the show. I was already meditating. I was already, seeing possibly visions in my meditations, connecting with source in different ways, opening up things inside of myself way before the show. But the show is just really kind of fast forwarded everything in a big way, because I'm just getting not only downloads of information every day that I talk to these amazing guests, but also just the energy of being around people like yourself. Even through Zoom, the energy changes you. When you're interviewing a channel, the energy that comes through a channel is heavy. When you're talking to a psychic, the energy coming through them is heavy, and it's heavy in a reading for 10 or 15 minutes. But sometimes I go in 90 minutes. I feel sometimes tired, exhausted. Sometimes you could even see it in my, originally. Now I can handle it a lot more. My body's kind of getting used to the energy shifts. But at the early part,
besides energy, though, Alex, besides energy shift, and has it changed your mindset? I mean, do you wake up every day with a different way of looking at things based upon some of the guests you've had? Yeah,
of course, yeah. My life has changed dramatically. I look at things differently. I'm a lot more patient than I used to be. I don't sweat the small stuff nearly as much, unless it's with my children. They drive me nuts. But
you can't apply your spirituality to your children now.
No, absolutely not. They are the only ones who understand what buttons to push, when to push them, and
it's boy, a deal.
And they are great at it. They are my great teachers, as I say. They're great teachers.
They're great teachers. You agree to it, yeah.
But all joking aside, yeah, it's changed me dramatically.
It's enhanced your life.
Oh, without question. And as I continue to go forward, and now that we have a live studio, which we'll hopefully have you in there soon,
you will.
You know, meeting people, interviewing them in person, the energy is so much different. And you just feel the difference in the conversation. You feel the difference, the interaction with it. But yeah, my life has changed completely.
Well, Kellee, what'd you think about that?
He's phenomenal.
You just weren't there for him, right?
So. I wasn't there, so it was phenomenal. And you two really have such a lively discussion.
We do. We get along really. We just like understand each other, and I want the best for him. And anything he does, I support because he's really attracting a lot of people, not even into this what we call movement or what people across everywhere, across the broad scope of all different interests. People are meeting Alex, so it's very, very fascinating.
Oh my gosh, how great! Wow. Yeah.
So, what would you say is another one you would like to show everybody?
I'll tell you, I just love Gregg Braden.
Braden. My soul brother.
Oh my gosh. He's just terrific. He's a mystic and he's a scientist. So he uses his left brain and his right brain. And what I love the most about this, I mean, he talked about so many different things. He talked about AI, where AI is going in. And he talked about
good versus evil, light versus dark.
Exactly. And how for us to keep our immune systems up for the next 10 years, it's going to be a very challenging time. But one of the things that I think I appreciated the most was when he talked about his childhood. We asked him about his childhood.
Yeah, I know you really.
I love that because I'm always curious where genius comes from. What was your mother like, and what was your father like?
I am the product of a very dysfunctional, abusive, alcoholic family. My father was the abuser. I have a younger brother, 4 years younger, and myself and my mom. Fortunately, he left when I was 10, and I was happy about that. My mom was devastated because 1950s and 60s. Now she's raising two boys on her own with no job. I mean, we were more than poor. We were in government subsidized housing that I felt very, very thankful existed at that time. I lied about my age. Went to work in a copper mill, a copper factory. When I was 16, I was supposed to be 18 to have a union job. And I used to work after school. It was a union job, 12-hour shifts. It was 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. And I used to make really good money. And I was very proud to be able to. In those days, you got a paper paycheck. Everybody would line up by the time clock and they would hand everybody a check, and I would take that check home, and I knew it would contribute to our family in a meaningful way. And so my mom and my brother and I, we worked really hard to pull that, and we were all Cancerians for those astrologers out there. I was born the 28th of June, and my mom and my brother were early July. 3 Cancerians in a broken home with a lot of emotion and no tools to deal with it. And it was pretty brutal.
I just have to tell you this, Gregg. I do destiny. I'm an astrologer too, but I do destiny cards, and you're what we call a 2 of clubs. So let me just tell you briefly for you to know, a 2 of clubs comes to overcome fear.
Oh, really?
Yes. And you really have overcome fear. And not only that, you're doing it on a world stage.
Wow, that's interesting. I'm going to read more about your work. Well, it was interesting for me. You all, I mean, you talk to people all the time that come from, I know, similar situations, but when there's an alcoholic in the family, they will find their false sense of power by demeaning and belittling other people. I was really blessed from day one. I had a very strong soul compass, and I did not believe what my father said to me. My younger brother, for whatever reason, whatever his path is, did not have that soul compass and believed, to this day, believes everything.
Wow.
And it has influenced his life. We're like night and day.
Wow.
Always one in a family. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really, really interesting how that works.
I just love him. Every time I see him, I hear his words. It's such a vibration. I've known Gregg for so many years now, close to 30 years. And we used to go on the circuit, him and myself and Brian Weiss and Doreen Virtue and Wayne Dyer and Deepak Chopra. And we used to go together like all over different cities. Gregg has not changed. He's always been the warmest guy.
Out of curiosity, what was it like to travel in those days in that circle?
It was an interesting time because there weren't many people. There was like maybe 10 people that were doing this. That's before Hay House even started. Hay House was going on. I remember I worked with Louise on Tuesday nights at the Hayride in Los Angeles. She had for AIDS patients. And I went there and actually asked her to be a speaker in a group that I was working on, and she did. But it was early Hay House time, and they weren't really coordinating it with speakers yet. So, and this was before then. So we did a lot of whole life expos, that sort of thing. And gosh, in San Francisco and Chicago and Boston, we worked a lot with Omega Institute on a tour, if you will, as well. So different cities, but it was interesting because we were really kind of a small group and we really got to know each other pretty well. We really looked out for each other because we felt like we were the oddities, you know.
Yes.
Especially myself and Brian Weiss. We used to talk every day on the phone. And we always felt and he said, don't let the turkeys get you down. Because, you know, we were chartering new waters. So it was very interesting.
Yeah. Don't let the turkeys get you down.
And forget that. Don't let the turkeys get you down. I did about 25 cruises, a lot of them with Brian. And so it was really good. And you meet people, Gregg, Braden, such a sweetheart. So all these people, it's just really nice. And as you get older and you look back at each other, you see each other again. But that love is still there. The memories are still there. Not with everybody, but there's certain individuals, like the people that we're talking about, that just, wow, warms your heart.
So what else? Who else stands out for you for the year that we've had?
Well, it's interesting because of course, mediumship has become so popular, right? Mediumship became very, very popular. I mean, you can't turn around and be hit by another medium. They're everywhere. So one of the mediums that was on a show who's very, very, who's risen through the ranks here, Suzanne Geisemann. So Suzanne Geisemann is now doing very, very well with her mediumship all over the world. And she was a guest on the show. It's fabulous, down to earth. And here you go. Here's Suzanne. And
Did
Suzanne,
you have trouble breaking a pattern when you were growing up with, as far as maybe a religious background or with a family?
I mean, right up until the last month, breaking a pattern of my mother saying
really?
You know, you're not allowed to be angry. You can't be sick. You can't be sad. I mean, this has been a lifelong journey. And that's, you know, we can look back and be the victim, or we can find the joy as we set that aside and life becomes ever more free and beautiful and you feel that connection. So I'm loving life now.
Good for you.
And it is really living in the moment, isn't it? It's living each moment because that's all we have, right?
And every time we work on ourselves, our connection with spirit gets better.
Yeah.
So
yes,
lately, I'm so grateful that it's just loving the flow.
You know, the reason I asked about energy, because, you know, we all believe, I'm sure, the same thing here, but like attracts like. So if you bring up your energy and that joy and that love, you'll attract that into your life, into your space, huh?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's pretty great. And I have a question for you here, which is kind of, you know, I have to ask this. How do you start your session in a way? Like, what do you tell them? If it's someone that's never been to a medium before, knows nothing about life after death, maybe thinks you're crazy, whatever it is, what's your start?
First, I do have a read ahead for people who come to me, so I don't have to spend all that time telling them.
Very good.
Very good. Basic awareness, so we can just get right to their loved ones who are standing here waiting to talk to them. But what I tell them is the test of any good reading is that you're going to leave here and say, oh my God, that was my loved one.
Yeah.
And that's it. You know, that's the goal. And then it can take it from there. If they're still here, what does that mean for all of us? That life is eternal, that love never dies. And so the evidence and the messages and capturing someone in spirit's essence is what will get them to say, that was them. Not, well, I think they might have had them, not wishy-washy, but
Right.
life-changing, rock your world, end the BS. It's just, this is real.
What I loved about this is I love Suzanne. She gives symbols and names for things. So she calls belief systems BS, which I always thought was just hilarious. And she's written she's a wonderful writer. Has written a couple of really good books and really helpful in this arena that we're in.
And I like her approach of being very down to earth because she's that military background.
Yes.
So everything's right down to earth, black and white. Here it is. Here it is. Here's. And I think at the beginning it caused a little bit of trouble because, in a way, medium should be have to kind of jump in and surrender. And I think that might have been hard for her at the very beginning because that's a little different. You got to really be open, and there are kind of no rules in some way. You get to jump on in, so it might be a little hard.
So true. So true.
Hey, Kellee, one of our shows which did really, really well, which I want to talk about, was when we decided to do the trip through the spirit world, the tour of the spirit world.
Oh, I loved it. I love the trip to the spirit world.
So, I mean, how can you describe that other dimension, the three-dimensional?
You gave such really clear examples of what goes on the other side in a loving arena of so many possibilities, infinite possibilities of everything that goes on the other side. And you talked about specifically with different souls that you've known on earth that guided you to the other side.
Yeah.
Which was really interesting that most people wouldn't have had that experience.
And they
tell them what they're doing. And they still do.
Every day I hear them every day. It's almost a sense that they're never away. They're right around. And it's almost like they're right around. Yeah. And I love that. I just love that. And that thought of for everybody, of course, the show was that, you're blanketed in love. That's what it feels like. So some of the things we do know, right? We'd say, first of all, when you're going to leave the body, which we've done millions and millions and millions of times before, it's not the first time. Remember, you're a soul having a human experience. And this time here is only relative to this three-dimensional vibration, three-dimensional world. And it's funny because there is no such thing as time outside of this box, outside of this car, if you will. Right. And so when you let the window down and go out, and he's like, oh, yeah, there's no time. That's limited to that box I was in. So
it's just on Earth, there's time in this dimension.
It's just in this dimension because we got to measure things, if you will. And I guess there would be I guess, Kellee, what do you think? There's a little bit of adjustment period depending on someone's passing. So let's say depending on the conditions that they have. So and the conditions not only of the physical body, but also of their mind, of their belief system would affect their passing when their time comes to, I always say graduate to go back home. I just think it's there depending upon the situation. One thing I can say, and Kellee, I don't know if you'll agree with this or not, but there is no pain in death, no matter how you pass.
That's correct.
The car accident, a heart attack, a murder, a suicide, it doesn't matter. The physical body does not, because you're not the physical body. It's just
the soul has already left. Yeah,
that's right. You're that essence. Again, there's no time. And it's also, everybody, which is very interesting, is no one ever dies alone. The spirit people, your guides, teachers, loved ones who are believing in you and really are invested in your best, greatest interest, who you are, because they're part of your growth, are around you before you pass days, months of earth.
Well, it's been my experience, I'd say 6 to 8 weeks in advance, that call goes out. So there's no such thing as an accident, or it's just no such thing. It's an exit point.
And it's interesting you say a call goes out. And I've heard that friend Mavis has often talked about this, our friend Mavis, that there's a call that goes throughout the worlds within worlds within worlds, which there are many worlds on the other side, that there's a calling. And they say calling, and I often wonder what that means, Kellee. I often wonder it's the vibration of that soul that
it's almost like a magnetic pull, James.
A magnetic pull.
It's like, okay, it's time. I've got to go. This is going to happen now. And it's it's automatically, you know it. Automatically, you understand it. Thoughts come right into you.
Well, that's just it, because thoughts are things. Thoughts are so real. It's so interesting. In this world, we don't see thought, but step outside this box, thoughts are all around. And they say thought is everything. Right. And of course, there's a physical vibration, but the mental vibration right outside this world, it's all thought. So that thought goes out that the soul is coming home and we have to prepare for it or get ready for its arrival. And there's always a reunion, always a reunion.
And so would everybody, whatever your belief system could be also,
That's right.
what would be there to greet you.
Right. So when my friend Carolyn passed over, she said, wow, the most amazing thing was they were all waited for me. They waited for me to come over. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean they all waited for their progression of their own spirituality to progress, to meet her and progress? No, I think that they stopped whatever their works were, wherever they were, whatever worlds they were in, to come to a meeting point. And there usually is a meeting point, by the way. There's usually a meeting point, and it could take place originally in, if there's a hospital room or a bedroom or one of the initial leaving of that physical is. And it could be, there's a meeting point, there's a meeting place. There's also halls of orientation. And many times the soul will go immediately to a hall of orientation or reception where they see all of their loved ones again. There was one description at an out-of-body experience where a friend was telling me about this, and an old man who was about 85 or 86 when he passed, and he was this hall of orientation. And in his mind, he was an older man. He was an old man. And in this hall of orientation, they were watching him, and he was holding onto his guide. His guide held his hand, and as if this guy had this elixir in his hand, he turned gold, and the liquid went through, and he turned younger and younger and turned to a 36-year-old man right before everybody's eyes.
Wow.
You tend to go back to the younger part of life that you want to go back to.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, one of my favorite guests, and I know this is one of yours too, was Davidji.
Oh, Davidji.
Loved having Davidji. I mean, talking about a soul brother for you. I mean, my favorite, James, was when he told, the whole thing was my favorite, is from his meditation to his story, but the backstory of how it, like near 9/11, how he met a homeless person and it kind of transformed his life. That was fascinating.
Fascinating. And that, another one that David stays the same all these years, the same being, just same lovely, grounded person. And I would, I share my life with him. I let it, he's a wonderful soul. Would you share with everybody the story you have about going to work, the 9/11 story?
Oh, sure. Well,
great.
As I mentioned, I'm from New York, and so I've lived there and worked there for many, many years, and I worked actually for a period of time on the 82nd floor of Tower 2 of the World Trade Center. And a few months before 9/11, I was invited by someone to leave my company and go to their company. So that person essentially saved my life. Also created some, survivor's remorse in that process as well. But in the wake of 9/11, as I was sitting with all this sadness and questioning and deep trying to figure out like what's this all about? What is life all about? Who am I? What's the meaning of existence? I was walking past a row of cardboard boxes in southern Manhattan that people were living in. And I walked past this particular box, and suddenly a hand reached out and grabbed my pant leg, and this person really pulled me in and leaned up into me. He had these blue crystalline eyes, and he suddenly made this like deafening eye contact and said, "What's going to be on your tombstone?" And it's a fairly reflective question. What's going to be on your tombstone? Hadn't thought about it. Certainly in the wake of all this internal devastation that I was feeling. And I call these butterfly moments. As soon as he said that to me, suddenly all the noise of New York stopped. There were no cars. There were no people. There were no footsteps. There were no horns honking. It was total silence. It was me and this being. I don't know if this was God speaking to me or the voice of God speaking to me through this person, or if I have no idea. But in those moments, which seemed like hours, that he held me in there, we like suddenly transferred information back and forth without speaking. There were feelings, there were emotions. I started crying. My heart started palpitating. I was so fully present. This was the only moment in existence. And then he, I reached into my pocket because I figured, oh, this person wants me to give them some money. And he pinned my hand against my pocket. And he said, this isn't about money. The answers are in the stars. And then he vanished back into his box, and my knees were weak and I could barely contain myself. I was sobbing. I sat down on the stairs of an apartment building like 20 feet away, replaying that question. What is going to be on my tombstone? Why am I here? What's the whole point of all of this? And it hit me so deeply. I've had other butterfly moments since then, and I'm sure we all have had them in some way where everything just stops and the message, it's like an Alan Watts moment. Suddenly, poof, the message comes in. And, he always says, when you get the message, you can hang up the phone now. Because you don't stay in the line anymore. You got it. It's okay.
And James, what did you think about Shehnaz? She's a NASA scientist, right?
Pretty incredible. Wow. Yeah. And from that point of view, I mean, I love from the scientific point of view. And when you match, you marry science and spirituality, not easy to do. But there are some people, scientists, who have the both worlds together, integrated really nicely. She's one of them. Please help me in welcoming Shehnaz to me. Hi, Shehnaz. Welcome, sweetheart.
Hi, James. Thank you so much for this gathering. I'm so excited to see what we unfold.
Tell us more about when you got to NASA and how did that all work out?
So it was kind of a process, right? So first I had to fight to get an admission because that was a huge challenge by itself.
Big deal. Yeah.
Because of the fact that I had a fail in my mark sheet, which was nothing to do with my performance. It had everything to do with riots going on the day when I wanted to take a test. So it had a whole story attached to it. So I went, because out of the 3 schools that I applied, I wanted to go for UC Irvine. So I went and met the chancellor. I made an appointment to meet her to tell her why I need to get admission. And then when I told her in my broken English, the entire story of how this fail has nothing to do with my performance, it's everything to do with the culture, she was completely blown away. And she basically gave me a admission on contingency. And she said, you have to maintain your grade, above 3.0. And so I am learning English. At the same time, I'm learning engineering. And the professors who were teaching me engineering, they were Chinese. So they were not necessarily good. So I was having so many variables. And then I'm married to a man who has his own demands and all that. So I was doing all of that as a multidimensional species. Yeah.
Yeah, you signed up for a lot. So Kellee, I have a question for you. A lot of people always ask this question to myself, and I know you. So is there a heaven and is there a hell? What do you say?
Well, it's a great question. And we actually had a guest. I will answer that, but we also had a guest, David Suich, that
I'm asking you this.
answered the question for us. And I think you and I both kind of fall into this. First of all, there's a heaven. Yes, there's definitely a heaven. Definitely a heaven. And then there's other energies. And for me, and I think David really described it, our guest David Suich described it so well as, it's when you're having a hard, you've had you've made some bad choices. I guess I'll say it that way. And there's a darker energy that a negativity energy that I think he goes into and describes. How would you describe? I don't know if it's a living hell, or how would you describe that kind of energy?
You got to be careful not to get caught up in the human perspective of things. But to me, as you said, it's all energy. So well, heaven, to me, that's love. Mm-hmm. And that's joy, joyfulness, and you when you pass over, if your life review and you see the good, the bad, the different choices that you made and how it affected people. Now, did it affect people in a positive way or a negative way? And that's your heaven or your hell, because you got to relive all those thoughts, all those words, everything you put out to people and to the universe. You have to relive that. So that can be your heaven, or it can be your hell. Let's say you said something to someone, you did something, and you can't take it back now. And you got to live with that in your head, those thoughts in your head.
Yeah. Yeah. David Suich is an NDE, a near-death experience expert. Actually, I think he had over 700 experiences with near-death.
He did.
Experiences. Amazing. And quite an analyst. So everybody watch a glimpse of this. Does hell exist with David Suich?
The common with the hell experiences or all the experiences?
With the hell experiences. For what they described as hell or aspects of hell. What did they say? And if they were the same, experiences or not.
I like to quote that movie from the early 1990s, Defending Your Life. He says, actually, there is no hell, but I hear Los Angeles is getting pretty close. Right?
love it.
There's actually, what heaven says is there's actually no heaven and hell. There's just countless number of realms created by the collective groups of souls that are there.
Love
So
that.
the theme in hellish experiences are out of control fear. Some include suffering, torture. Some see other souls. There's different environments. One guy was in this sort of nothingness where he was comfortable. He wasn't, physically being tortured or anything like that. But just he was by himself with all his thoughts and memories and things like that. So it's not a permanent sentence. That's another common theme. It is not a punishment. It's a choice, maybe subconscious. The soul tends to be attracted where there are souls most like them. So if
That's
you
right.
lead a life of cruelty and selfishness, you might end up temporarily in a realm like that because you get attracted
That's
to
exactly what I've heard.
souls. Yeah. But when they're ready, every soul comes home. God does not leave any of his children out in the cold to die.
One of my favorite guests, and I'm sure was one of your favorites, is Anita Moorjani.
Well, another one, going back, us oldies there. I've always loved another one who is just the same the day I met her, pure of heart and joyful and humble and honest and lovely, lovely soul. It's she's wonderful, and I think very, very intelligent and what a great teacher.
When we die, we leave behind our physical bodies, but not only do we leave behind our physical bodies, but we leave behind our gender, our culture, our race, our religion. All of it gets left behind, all our baggage, all our traumas. And so what crosses over is just our pure essence. It's pure love.
Anita, when you left your body for the first time, did you know that you were dying, or just were you out of the body? Was there a sensation of leaving the body, or were you just out of the body?
It felt like I was expanding so that I was coming out of the body, not even pouring out, but like my spirit it's kind of like my awareness started to leave the body and become more aware of my soul or my spirit. And then the awareness begins to realize, like my awareness starts to realize that, oh my gosh, but this spirit or this soul is so much bigger than the body. Oh my gosh, where does it end? It doesn't end. And it goes on. So it's like I'm expanding and expanding. And it's like, oh, there's no border. There's no physical end to where I am. The physical end was when we're in the body and we think that this is all we are. But actually, I'm so much more. I'm much more than just the body. So it was a sensation like that. So like I reached a point where I was given a choice as to whether I wanted to come back into my physical body or not. Now, no part of me wanted to come back because it was so beautiful on that side. And over here, my physical body was in so much pain. I'd been in so much pain and fear and discomfort. I was always choking on the fluid in my lungs. And so no part of me wanted to come back. My family had been suffering, taking care of me. But my dad wanted me to know that my purpose wasn't complete yet. So he wanted me to know that I had suffered enough. And if I didn't go back, I would be missing out on the gifts or the lessons from the suffering, and that I had things to experience still. And I realized that even my husband's purpose and my purpose was linked. And if I didn't come back, he wouldn't be able to fulfill his purpose either.
Every time I see her, I just melt. She's just great.
Right. I could listen to her talk all day. She's terrific. Oh my gosh. And we also had another fabulous guest. That was Dr. Linda Backman.
Oh my God.
Extraordinary. I love having a psychologist who's also a spiritualist, in this arena. And she's amazing. And she talks about 3 types of souls. And she says there are earthbound souls that have spent more time on earth. And then she talks about intergalactic souls, which is
Right.
always so fascinating to me. And then she talks about angelic souls. So when she works with souls through hypnosis, she works with this 3 types of souls. So please, everybody, take a look at Dr. Linda Backman.
I learned this from regression after regression after regression. So there are 3 types of souls, or what I call soul origin, that may incarnate on Earth. So those 3 types are, there are souls that, and I've been, given labels through regression. So there are souls that we call Earth-based. And I'm not saying, because I know people sometimes think I'm saying earthbound. You guys know that's a different terminology. So I'm not saying earthbound, I'm saying earth-based. Earth-based souls are essentially created to grow and evolve in the body on Earth, lifetime to lifetime to lifetime to lifetime, on and on. And that's an Earth-based soul. About 95 to 97% of all humans are Earth-based.
Wow.
And then there are 2 other types of souls that may come to Earth. And I end up working a lot with all 3 types because these are spiritually oriented people. And so they're not all Earth-based. So the second type, if you will, is what I call interplanetary. That's what the book Souls on Earth is all about. That's client material from interplanetary souls. For people listening, think about the term ET, think about the term starseed. It all means the same. So an interplanetary soul is a soul that was created to reside somewhere in the greater celestial realm, and for the most part, or maybe never, not incarnate on Earth. And if what I call an IP soul, interplanetary, if an IP soul comes to Earth, it's because they come from an advanced culture in the universe. They come from a healthy culture in the universe, and they agree to bring their healthy perspective of life to humanity to aid humanity. They often struggle with health issues, emotional issues, autistic spectrum issues, but we need them on this planet because they are so wise. Then the third type is equally fascinating to work with these different types of clients and different types of souls. The third type is a soul that comes from the angelic realm.
Okay.
So think about source, or people can use their term, God, the divine, great spirit, source. Source has a cadre, a group of souls that serve as ambassadors of source, of pure love and compassion, focus and energy. And I think we all know as spiritual people, this planet needs more love and compassion. So at times, angelic souls incarnate in the human body, and they are usually very emotionally sensitive. They're often really lovely people because their heart is as big as you can imagine. But they again need to understand who they are, why they are the way they are, and how they're needed on the planet. So I work with all 3 types of souls.
So Kellee, it's been some year with us.
It has been some year, James.
And then we're gonna just a couple of things to remember from this past year. So you could make a couple of shows. And
Yes.
I'm sorry to say it, but one of my, I guess you could not say favorite, but moments was I can't do the show right now. I'm in the middle of a tornado. Was that
Yeah.
what
So I never missed a show except that we had a tornado, and I had to quickly get into the basement. So I missed doing a show.
Our love to Kellee. Kellee White is right now on an island of Georgia visiting her family. And of course, Kellee is experiencing hurricanes and tornadoes and floods. So we love you, Kellee. Good luck. My goodness, what a year it's been.
That was one thing. I mean, it was really quite a year, James. And you had a busy year.
I've had a busy year. It's
Travel?
Travel. I traveled a bit. I traveled to see it as you get older. It's hard to remember things. So one day blends into the other.
Right.
I was back in New York as visiting some family, and I was kind of. It's a really weird time, when as you get older and the time zones change, and you really don't adapt that quickly. And I had a rental car, and it was New York, and it was in a hotel. It was a motel, a hotel in Queens. And Queens has changed so much since I was a kid. It's all different. So I was really disoriented. I couldn't I didn't know where I was. The streets were all different. They're all one-way streets now. It's so congested. So I guess I parked my rental car, right? And then the next morning I woke up and I couldn't remember where it was.
Gosh.
I
I
walked.
think we can all relate to that.
I walked all around the blocks looking. I remember it was a red car. I'm like, I couldn't be this far away. It was like 4 or 5 blocks. Like, what's going on? And I was just so disoriented in time-wise. And like, what's going on here? So my sister ended up, I had to call my sister, and she got her husband came in from Long Island and met me. And we went around in his car looking, and it was right behind the hotel. Like, wow.
Well, that's great. Well, it was on so many levels a discombobulating year.
So astrologically, what do you think astrologically, Kellee? I mean, there's some major events this past year.
We
right?
had some eclipses change lives.
Right.
And we had a couple of doozy eclipses from September 17th. We had one, and then we had another one on October 2nd of this year. And both have to do with health. And so I think people were looking at their health this year. They will be continuing to look at their health. But it was that kind of energy brings up a lot of discombobulation.
And I would say, I'm sure everyone would agree that intense energy, like a weird. You and I would call each other up and say, Kellee, what's spinning? Because everything is so fast.
Oh
right?
my God, everything was so fast, James. Oh my God.
Don't ask.
Okay, buddy, I'm sorry that we had a 15-minute delay. Between the eclipse and Mercury Gontanza, we had a problem. And it was, you okay, honey?
I'm okay. Yeah, I'm talking to a fruit bowl right now, but that's okay.
Oh my God. James was having trouble getting on for anything he did. It just didn't work.
It didn't work. The phone didn't work. The 2 computers didn't work. The studio I have didn't work. Brand new. So I finally got on my phone here, and I'm speaking to you from the phone, which is in a fruit bowl. I'm not
Oh
so
my God.
Forgive the angle.
Yeah.
Wow, what a day.
Well, it was a very powerful day with this eclipse, total eclipse. I'm curious, James, for you, what helped you grow the most this year?
Well, besides being with you on the show and the wonderful guests that, I apply what they talk about and listen and see how I can change my life in a positive way and kind of share that, in my daily life. I really try to do that. So, this past year for me has all been about compassion, caretaking.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of caretaking.
Yes, a lot.
And a lot of transformations, a lot of movement, a lot of changing things, a lot of being, I guess, right there and stationary and holding the space. Hold the space a lot this year. And my love for my doggy group, Praagh.
Oh.
And, a lot of reorganization, I guess you could say, too. I'm still in it. I'm still reorganizing stuff. I'm in the middle of cleaning up my bathroom, the shelving and the drawers and cleaning up my drawers. And I'm Virgo. When a Virgo cleans, watch out. So,
good.
God, it's only 3 years of you. But that's what I'd like to, I think it grounds me. I like to be grounded. So, my garden in this winter times, autumn to winter, it's very dark early, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why they do that in California. But it just seems, so I go inside. I go into the house and start working on the inside. Yeah.
Oh, great, great.
And what about you, Kellee?
Well, I'll tell you what helped me grow a lot personally. First of all, doing these shows with you always expands my energy and expands everything that I know, and it helps me when I work with people. I mean, I take all of this in and very seriously love to use it. But I'll never forget, James, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. And this happened the day after the election, and I will just never forget this. And I heard my spirit guide say to me, and I'll never forget this. He said, "Remember your assignment." Wow. Remember your assignment. And my assignment has always been to lift up the world, to raise consciousness. So no matter where the world goes and shifts, whether I have a gallbladder, whether I don't have a gallbladder, whether there's a tornado, whether there's an earthquake, it doesn't really matter. I have to lift up humanity.
Those are physical things. We need them.
Exactly. And I loved getting my book out, cracked open.
I was just going to say to you, the biggest part this year was your book.
My book was huge. Oh my God. First of all,
Cracked
thank
open,
you
number
so
one.
much. Number one for several weeks. And I'm just so thrilled about that. And thank you so much for your help and your encouragement. But that was really on my list to do, that heavy feeling where I knew I had to complete this book. So
Well, your mom was like pushing.
My
So.
mom was a pusher. It
Love
still
you,
is. So it's been quite a year for us.
It's good. So what do you think in the future? What's happening in the next year?
Well, we'll talk about that in our next show. We'll talk about
but
that.
Anything for you as far as personally, anything
Oh,
going on?
well, I have a lot
You're
of
still redoing your house.
I'm redoing my house. I've got book signings. I'm teaching a lot of classes next year. So a lot of things like that. Yeah, it'll be a good year.
I think Kellee, that's it.
That's it. Okay.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, James.
And with so many more incredible guests we've had, we share a few, but really spread the word, tell people about these wonderful beings. And and with you
See
guys.
everybody next year.
Bye, Kellee.